Hey guys, I'm so glad it looks like everyone's here. I wasn't sure if we were all going to be here after the holidays, so it's really good that everyone's here. How is everyone doing? How was everybody's vacation?
Quiet, but that's kind of how I like it, so
Yeah.
I'm calling that a win.
Spent
Yeah.
New Year's on a Zoom call with a bunch of my friends.
You what?
We all drank and celebrated, but that was really it. It was really boring, actually. But it was safe. My family's safe, so that's
Yeah.
times the month.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time on Zoom in the last 2 weeks with friends and family, and just sitting there like shoving articles toward each other about how screwed up the world is.
Sharing memes.
Yeah, sharing memes. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Justin, Matt, I see you guys in chat.
Yeah.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey,
Mm-hmm.
how's it? One of you guys go first. Say something.
I'll go first. I got this book for Christmas called Godel Escher Bach, and it's like that. It's like sort of a touchstone in AI books. I think some people refer to it as like the Bible in the AI world, and I've just sort of been tearing through it, and that's my holidays.
Of course, you know that's very. I understand it is of your character to do something like that. If you're gonna ask me to guess, Justin, what you did this holiday break, that would have been my guess.
It's really heavy theory stuff, and it's not very fun in the traditional sense. But I can't get enough of it. It's very cool.
It's that raw philosophy around AI.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Oh no, I'm a game mechanics nerd. I get it.
about
If it's a
AI.
subject you're passionate on, you can sit there and read about it all day, like driest stuff in the world. But if you're interested, it's interesting.
Yeah. And Chris, I would definitely say you're probably the authority on passionate dry reads. So, some of the novels you've passed me over the years, I'm like, yeah, you have to have a lot of passion to keep reading this. Matt, how was your break?
Yeah, it was good, man. Lots of family time. Started running again. It was good to get out, get some fresh air.
Yeah.
You know.
You've been hitting Mount Diablo?
A little bit, just the kind of foothills surrounding it.
Ah.
And then we have these long kind of paved trails. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Iron Horse.
I've heard of it. It's that long trail system that doesn't it go all the way around Mount Diablo?
No, it goes to Santa Clara from Pleasant Hill. It's pretty long, actually.
Oh, wow.
It's a
good
20 to 30 miles. I think it was old train tracks or something, but spent some time on there. That was good.
That's awesome.
Played some piano.
Oh, cool.
Lots of movies with the boys.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I didn't know you played the piano.
No, I just started about a month.
Oh, wow.
An actual piano or like a keyboard or?
Yeah, it's like a digital piano. It's like an 88 key, weighted key Yamaha.
Oh, cool. This is my little
Hang on.
Oh, there you
I
go.
really like it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah. That's awesome.
I'm really into synths. I really like the way I could make music through them and all that stuff. So my hobbies.
You listen to a lot of retro new wave?
Actually, I like synthwave actually a lot.
Yeah, I do too.
Kind of like vaporwave just a little bit,
Yeah.
Hey, it's all purple in here.
Yeah. Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah.
So, but before we get into it, Chris asked if he could go first with his update because he's on a limited time. And I am more than inclined to let him do that because his update is so super cool.
So we've got, and for those of you who are in the Discord with us, we've got I linked to you guys a Dropbox link for the first remade track for the soundtrack from our musical team of Emmy and Flint. They put that together for us. It's a remake of the first track off the original game's soundtrack. And it's really cool. They've updated the sounds a little bit. They've given it a little bit of a modern metal edge, which is really kind of cool.
I got goosebumps listening to it. I didn't see the update until this morning. I've kind of been out of the office the last few days. But when I heard it this morning, it gave me goosebumps. This whole remake has been about how do you create the thing that you think you remember playing. And I feel like they nailed it with the music, especially with the guitar that's so present, but it doesn't overwhelm the composition. I feel like they knocked this out of the park.
Well, yeah, the guitar is taking the place of some of the kind of, I loved them, but kind of synthy horns from the original piece.
Yeah, and it definitely feels more modern and less 90s CD-ROM Encyclopedia Britannica that the original kind of had, but it was part of the style back then. It was the technology back then is why everything sounded like that. And I feel like they remove that part of it and they add this modern. It's good. And Chris, would they be open to us releasing it on YouTube so that the audience can hear it?
I will confirm that. But I don't see an issue there because they know we're doing this stuff pretty openly.
Yeah. I just wonder if maybe we shouldn't do a YouTube video. Not just we should release the music on YouTube, just so that everyone can hear it. But we ought to do maybe an interview with the team so that everybody gets to know them. Our audience gets to know them a little bit, and what their thoughts were around making the music.
Definitely reach out to them this afternoon and ask them about that.
Yeah. Also, I remember. So in the last audio meeting where that I was at, we had talked about reaching out to the original composer, and we had found him. For the composer for the original game, Emmy has reached out to him. She has not gotten a response from him yet. Okay.
So
maybe we will over time. I know the holidays and this time of year, it's kind of hard. And I'm sure, especially if we put our work out there, he's going to see it eventually. Either one of us will share it, or
Well, in fairness, until we're actually getting money for this, we're still in the fair use place.
Yeah. Well, I would be curious I would be curious just to share it with him, just to see that other people love his work.
Indeed.
So yeah. So
I'll reach out to them this afternoon and see where we are with that, with them. Because actually, so what my thought is maybe, because this is a nice little intro piece, what we could actually do is we could use the original music as intros and outros for these recordings when these go up on YouTube.
What do you mean intros and outros? Oh, put it in our video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the one that's there now, it'll be the theme song as the video goes up. And, just it'll lead us in and lead us out. And when we get a new piece, we can swap it out. And that's how we can show the music off.
Yeah. I could even, when I take this video that we're recording now and I put it to YouTube, I could put it in the background as the audio track. But that might not do it justice. That's the only thing I'm afraid of.
So yeah, I'll talk to them about how they feel comfortable with this being displayed.
Yeah.
Or distributed. And I'll get back to you.
Okay. Sounds great. Thanks a lot, Chris. And talk about perfect delivery. We had talked about making at least one of the tracks available by the 1st, and you had it right on the 1st, like right on that day.
So they're working on track 2, and
cool.
I'll let you guys know when I've got an ETA on that.
Okay. Excellent.
And then I'll keep everyone updated on that. In the meantime, I've got to run. But y'all have fun with the fun graphic stuff that I don't really care about.
Sounds good, Chris. Thanks for coming and thanks for sharing it by the 1st.
All right, no worries. I'll talk to y'all later.
Okay, later, Chris. So who wants to go next?
I'll go next. I mean, it's not that much to go through. It's just kind of the.
It's not, but it is, because I saw the screenshots you sent the other day, and it is a huge step in a direction we had not necessarily factored in yet.
Okay, so I'm sharing my screen and all that stuff, and so I made 2 versions of the asteroids. One's a lower resolution for like all the way could have more of them on screen without bogging down any systems. And then I made higher resolution asteroids, so that way, like when you're up close, you know, like it'll be like more detailed. And yeah, it turned out pretty good. You know, I just ran them through, made like a you know, they're seamless.
Yeah.
And so like, the idea is that the front row is the asteroids before they explode, and the second row is when they explode. There's like split apart, and there's like a centerpiece and all that stuff, and the outer shell is kind of like pops, like a popcorn, I guess. And then yeah.
Yeah. So they'll actually look like the chunks are physically separating from each other, and not just we have a model of an asteroid. We have some particle effect showing it explodes, and then it just spawns little chunks. This actually will look seamless, the way an actual asteroid exploding might actually look.
And it keeps it's pretty much the same shell, but I just like extruded it. I mean, I cut it up in pieces, and then I just did like a solidify modifier, and then you know I ran that through. And it uses both asteroids use the same texture set, so there's no memory being eaten up with unnecessary stuff.
Yeah.
In the background. And so yeah, I mean, like, you know, it's not like a big accomplishment or anything, like, you know, creating a whole score of music and all that stuff, but it's necessary.
It is absolutely.
It looks great.
Yeah, it looks incredible. It's not that it's not important like the music. It you know, this there's a false equivalency there. This is incredible. This is just the fact that you would think of this and then independently go and say, you know what we need? This thing needs this. That's incredible.
Well, they play a big role in it, I think. You know, I mean, if we're gonna have like you know, they could provide us like a wall between the spaces in space that we have. So maybe we could funnel players or something like that, and
yeah,
you know, make it so that you couldn't just like cut corners or whatever, or just have it so it's just be careful where you're flying kind of deal. I don't know, you know. And I made them relatively the size of the ship. And oh yeah, and I also I updated the normals on the textures and all that stuff so that they look a bit more crisp.
Yeah.
I told the game engine to prioritize the normal texture and put more like detail into it, so that way like I'll have a more crisp kind of look to it, and that way it's like because like the normals have the most details in it, you know, out of all the other texture information that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
So I updated the version of the game that we're going to be seeing today, so things are going to look a little bit more improved.
Yeah. One thing I want to remind everyone who shares their screen, when you share the screen, can you share the whole screen and not just the application view? Because Dan, as you click the Unity window, it's jumping back and forth between different elements. Yeah. It's a little stroby. I don't want to give our audience a seizure.
Shit, I don't either.
Yeah. No, but this looks absolutely incredible. That's awesome, Dan. That's so cool. I'm pleased as punch that you took it upon yourself to do something like that, because we hadn't even considered that. We had asteroid models, and I think we all thought, let's just use those, and when you shoot them, we'll put a particle effect, you know, standard stuff. But just to go above and beyond, God, I can't wait to see these dynamics in the game. I can't wait to shoot one of these things. Yeah.
I was playing the build earlier. I busted out one of my old Xbox controllers, and that was a lot of fun. I had to get used to playing with the, you know, like I used to play like Wing Commander and TIE Fighter versus X-Wing back in the day.
Yeah, the 90s.
They were cheap, and I was like, my dad would get mad and be like, I'm not even anything. These are
Yeah. Yeah, I know. On a controller, the game, it feels very different, but once you get a hang of it, I think their control scheme for the original made a lot of sense.
Yeah, it works. Yeah, I was able to pick it up pretty quickly. I even showed my family, so I was able to impress my nephews. I'm like, check this out. You know?
Oh my God, that's so cool. Yeah. Yeah, I've had a handful of people I've been able to show it to thus far, and they're like, oh, neat, cool. But I haven't, other than my dad and my brother, I haven't been able to show very many people. That's awesome, Dan. Cool. Who wants to go next? I know, Matt, you have stuff you wanted to show. For those of you who don't know, we canceled last week's meeting so that we could all take time with our families. And I know that, Matt, you're like, oh, but I had so many cool things to show.
Well, I mean, maybe not so many, but...
Setting proper expectations.
All right. Can you guys see that all right?
Yeah, and you're sharing the whole screen, right? So we don't get that.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, okay.
Is it flashing or anything on you?
Not yet.
No.
Okay. So I got started on the grappling hook, and I'll show you guys what that looks like. This is just basically have done just the visual element of it here.
Oh my god!
I can't really attach to anything yet. My goal for next week is to be able to pull a power cell or an asteroid around.
Yeah.
But
cool.
yeah, I can sling it
That
out.
looks so cool!
Yeah, that looks awesome.
Yeah, if I get closer to it, it kind of slacks a little bit.
That's so cool!
Awesome.
Oh my god, that is
Is this just with line renderers, or how'd you do this?
Yeah, that's a line renderer. I found a good tutorial on animating a line renderer with a sine function. But it was 2D, so I had to do quite a bit of finagling to get it to work. But I think it looks good so far.
Yeah, and let me guess, are you using the original grapple hook model I sent you over the weekend?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my god, that's so cool. Maybe we just leave that in as just, and it doesn't need to be any more complicated than that.
I mean, it's so small, right? You can't really,
you can't really
cool.
see it.
I like it. This is really
And it'll be a nice homage to the original modelers, the people that did the original. Be like, yeah, we use the same grapple hook model. It's very simple.
Can you grab other planes and like hold on to them? Like, what happens when you? I'm so curious.
Yeah, what happens if you shoot the tribe gunship here?
Oh, nothing right now.
Okay.
That's something I have to work on. I need to know actually what happens when I do latch onto another ship.
Yeah.
I think applying forces through rigid bodies would be very good to do this. There's the whole thing in the original game where if you hook onto something heavier than you, then they will pull you instead.
Yeah.
So when you're implementing the hook function, then use rigid body forces.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna start by just kind of pulling around power cells and asteroids for now.
Yeah.
Get that working first.
Yeah, because that literally inside this first demo of the first 3 levels of this game, you do pull around the power cells. So having that dialed in is probably the most crucial part.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Now another thing I saw in there in that build, somebody's done something with the lighting engine. It looks different. It looks better.
Oh, thanks.
Is that you, Dan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some lights. I didn't do a whole lot. I think they've been tweaked by our programmer. So thanks to Justin, I think. But what I did is I took 2 directional lights and I just pit them against each other, and just just kind of one is an off color of what the original one was. So it's kind of like that way you can kind of put itself. Yeah, I'm still poking around trying to figure out how to get it to do a little bit better. And I also told the lighting system to do hard shadows, which I don't know. I can't tell the difference between on or off right now. I don't know if it's the environment or whatever's going on, but yeah, it's a little bit brighter on both sides because we have two lighting. Because it's not just like you're not like on a plane anymore.
Yeah, that's really interesting because one thing I noticed in one of the build that I used to shoot the teaser trailer, I did notice, especially with the larger vessels, if you approached them at a certain angle from where our sun was, there you go, a certain angle from where the sun was, they would almost go dark, and it was like this weird lighting artifact, and I just assumed the lighting engine will update that in time, and I had to rush the video out. But wow, that looked like such a huge improvement.
Yeah, I can't wait to see the other ships and what they're gonna look like and all that stuff too. It's coming. This whole project's coming together really well. I think this is probably the furthest we've ever gotten on something like this.
Yeah. And yeah, for our audience, for people who don't know, me, Matt, and Dan have known each other forever. I mean, literally since we were 18 years old, and we've worked on a lot of stuff together, a lot of games. Few of them have moved so quickly, meshed so well, and been so easy's not the right word, but I am thoroughly impressed by what we're doing. It's never been this cogent before. It's never been so smooth. I feel like the development on this, the obstacles, I don't know about you guys, but the obstacles I run into are things you can Google the solution for.
I think what happens too is that, you know, when we started doing stuff in 2000s, like, the tools weren't really there. You know, we really didn't have like a compiling system or a server we could upload, and there was very few places that we could. It was kind of, you sort of had to figure it out on your own a little bit. You know?
Oh yeah,
man. But not as much as it was, and since I would say that there was a Blender boom about it being, you know, kind of okay, and then it being very good, and now it's like a powerhouse. Like,
yeah.
I see it's gonna like really change the industry, you know, and like, I mean, like all my assets and stuff. Like I've been using Blender with a few other programs, but I'm like willing to. I've been debating if I want to even like continue with ZBrush on subscription. I kind of want to like. I don't really use it. No.
Yeah.
You guys remember like trying to use like Quark and trying to get things to work in the first source engine and things like that?
Remember
oh my god, what a headache.
Remember when Unity was Mac only and Will's lab only had 2 Macs for 30 of us?
I sent Dan some images of old stuff. Because I was going through my old email.
Uh-huh.
And like we were talking about, like, one of my replies was like, okay, I think I'm going to try to get this into the Torque engine this weekend. You guys remember Torque?
Yeah.
Nothing happened with that.
Nothing.
But we were all still learning at the same time, and now that now we have a knowledge of what we're doing in the pipeline. You know,
yeah,
you're right though. There was no information online for any of it. I remember like having to compile textures for source.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had to run it through a DOS compiler, which was dog shit, and then that was like, you know, hit or miss, depending if it was compressed enough or whatever you got out of it. You know?
Yeah. I remember those days. I remember having to use the application GTK Radiant, which was a level designer for Quake engine games, to build environments to shove into the Torque engine. And I remember teaching the class how to use it one night, and I remember the look on everyone's faces afterwards, like, this is way too complicated to build a box of a room, and that's probably why we never went further. We were doing something, and I remember I tried modeling Petra, the city of Petra, the ancient Middle Eastern city. There was a game we were designing around it, and it was Apocalypse. It was going to be impossible.
The wings and stuff.
Yeah, the wings.
The double polygons were accidents. They were meshed on top of each other, but they were reversed, so you couldn't tell the faces weren't fighting.
Yeah. They were competing for Z space. Yeah. Yeah. And
that was like made with it was made in Maya, actually. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I mean, like, geez, that was a long time ago. Yeah.
I remember modeling the temple and thinking, we are never going to be able to make this look like the real place, because the Quake engine and Torque were just, I mean, there was no documentation for anything better. And Unreal, and remember, Dan, when Unreal, like Engine 2.5, and 2.5 came out with this huge, thick red book that one of us... And we rushed to Barnes & Noble to pick that book up.
I have that book.
And we all had that book, and we all read it thoroughly, and remember the CD it came with, and all that stuff, and at best, we were able to make one little level.
Yeah, it was a level of custom textures and custom models, and that was the scripting for Unreal back then was like there wasn't any node wrangling or anything like that. You couldn't like, script nodes together. It was just
I think it was just C++.
Yeah, it was raw C.
It was Unreal's Java thing or whatever the hell it was, scripting language. And every time you found something, they didn't want to work on it because they were like, why am I not getting paid?
Yeah. The good old days, man. We've come a long way. See, Justin benefits, like, the world he's growing into, a lot of this stuff is really well documented now. But when we were his age, I mean, it was the Wild West.
We really having this talk about what I was doing.
Yeah, that's where we are right
Oh my
now.
God, I'm old.
Yeah, we're that old.
These goddamn whippersnappers.
You remember, Dan? You remember when we used to get together in your basement? We'd all bring our computers to do a LAN party. We'd LAN for a day, and then the next day we would work on what you called the zombie mod, and we were trying to build a zombie game.
Left 4 Dead.
Yeah, and then Left 4 Dead came out and fucked us. Yeah. Yeah.
And we had that programmer who kept smoking pot and disappearing, and they were like, "This isn't even gonna go anywhere."
Yeah.
Like 1920s. And I'm like, "Oh my God!" Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to play this.
God, we have been at this so long. Matt, remember what was that game, Bug Fighter, you worked on?
Oh yeah. That was like multimedia fusion, I think.
Yeah. You used didn't you use like
the engine that couldn't support? You guys made a bunch of hot animations, but the engine couldn't hold all the data or anything like that. And it was like sad to see. You guys were so close to finishing it. I remember you had like a spider and like it was really cool.
No, it was all right. Yeah, I don't know what happened. It just like it was just slowed down to a crawl, and working in the engine just was like a pain in the butt. So I don't know. But then again, it was that time where I don't know, if what I know now would have helped in that situation, because I just didn't know what I was doing, right?
I think the 2000s, like the whole beginning of the 2000s was a really rough time for like video games in general, because like there wasn't any normal maps, but they wanted it. They wanted more detail, but there wasn't enough shaders. It wasn't until like Half-Life 2 that came out that like really pushed the bar into the next kind of like shader information.
Pixel Shader 2.0.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's gonna be doing it, so.
For all I know, all I needed to do was like clear the cache or some stupid shit,
You still have the files? We can revisit that.
Awesome. Well, not to derail the meeting so much into nostalgia, but Justin, we're saying that we're very happy to have you along, and you don't know how lucky you are to have us. We're very lucky to have you, and you're lucky to have us, because we've done this for years, and it's been really, really hard.
Yeah, some of the stuff you're detailing.
From failure. We've learned a lot.
We failed between me, Matt, and Dan. We failed enough times for you.
I see. Some of the stuff you're detailing sounds very frustrating to work through, and I can see why. Like some of the roadblocks you're running into, I imagine I would have gotten very discouraged in that environment. So I'm happy in this one. It's different.
And you guys remember Matt? I remember having a conversation with you just a couple years ago about a game where we were sitting there saying, "It's got to be this one. This one's got to make it. This one's got to go."
Creature Crisis.
Creature Crisis. It's got to work this time. Oh boy, was that a humbling experience.
Yeah.
So at any rate, sorry, Justin. If you have something to show, now's the time.
Okay, so this sort of last 2 weeks isn't really I've been busy with different things, so I don't really have much like showables, but I do have so I updated the system I worked on like last session, where I was really excited to show it, and it was like, it will make collisions happen like 20% less. It's not that much, but it's very, very cool, whatever.
Yeah.
I updated that, and it's a very big change, because previously we were working in abstract. Each ship in the game would move in terms of the control stick. Like we would basically simulate a control stick for each of the AI, and then they would move that basically.
Yeah.
That was really tough in some regards, because it's like an abstract thing. Like, what is that? If I move the control stick 50% to the left, what does that mean? What I did was I updated it so it's in terms of angles and directions, which is a lot better. It's like infinitely better. I don't know why I didn't do that earlier, but I did, and it's very cool now, because now it's like I refactored a bunch of the code, so it's just more clear and it's easier to read, and I can't believe I didn't do this earlier. So yeah, that was the big change. Also,
hindsight is 2020.
literally, that's so much of this project. It's like, wow, if I thought about this for a moment, I would have realized that this is a better system in every conceivable way.
Sure.
But yeah. Anyways, Dan and I also worked together to figure out how to import the models correctly because I am new to importing models basically in Unity because I just haven't done that before. And so when I imported the models for the damage ships, they didn't have any textures on it, so we had to work through that. And now in this current version, the damage ships have textures. So this week I'm going to try and finish the when a ship blows up, it doesn't show that really small explosion default model. It's gonna actually show the ship breaking apart.
Yeah.
Also, I have a few questions that I think we should talk about right now.
Sure.
First off, so I was playing the original Colony Wars games, and it doesn't look like the ships move at full speed all the time. They move at full speed sometimes, but it seems like for the AI, the ship's default state is moving very slowly, so that the user is able to hit them and stuff. So what goal speed are we talking about for these AI?
I would imagine that would determine by. So we've talked about building AI profiles for the determining difficulty. If the player's doing a lot of winning, that will make the AI in subsequent levels more desperate and more forceful and more risky. I would imagine speed would be one of those variables. I noticed that too when I was playing it recently. The enemy ships can boost or go fast, but it doesn't seem like they do that until the later levels when you're fighting really hard enemies, and then it's like all of a sudden they're all going fast. So I would imagine we would want to build the speed in as one of the variables in the AI. And it would make more sense over consecutive levels. The deeper you get into the game, the more winning you're doing. The more the AI will choose to move at those higher speeds. I don't know in the original if there was ever a scenario where an enemy ship boosted the way you can boost, but I noticed that too. They do have an overall maximum speed that they don't run at all the time, especially in the first few levels. In the first few levels, there's almost something the game's teaching you how to play basically, and it wants you to be able to hit the enemy. So we may want to factor that in, and we could do that, I imagine, through this progressive AI we've been talking about.
I would say this decision might be worth playtesting.
Yeah.
Try it with it, try it without it. I like the idea that you're putting pressure on a particular enemy, and he's like really getting like thrashed. He should probably get the idea that maybe it's a good time to use my boosters. Or maybe
it's time to fly faster. I'm getting shot at a lot.
Maybe I should change my strategy,
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I was thinking as well. Just to sort of like the beginning of the game, they're slower, but then we sort of ramp that up over time. Also, I think we should start thinking about how can we make these levels seem more filled out in terms like we need to think about like what kind of particles can we put in the space to make it seem fuller in some sense, because right now it tends to look a bit empty in some sense. Like there's this game that just released, I think either just released or it is going to release. It's Star Wars Squadrons, and yeah, I'm gonna send a gameplay trailer in the chat. But if you take a look at that and just sort of scroll through it, they have just different minor tweaks in particles and just like space dust or whatever in the environment that makes it seem a lot more interesting than just empty. So I think that we should be considering like how much of this can we add in our own game to make it seem higher quality. That's the word.
Yeah. And it also gives a pace, because like if you're depending where you're going on stuff, it would be kind of neat too. It's like just to think about it. Maybe we could do things like if a ship has been blown up and destroyed, it changes those particles into more of like a combination of like scrap metal, and then when you're further away out of the zone, it's going back to like the
streaks,
Windows screensaver effect.
That makes perfect sense. I can't bring the video up now because it'll get into the capture stream, and I don't want to display but I'll look into it after the meeting. I agree. We have an opportunity here to think about that, and I'm glad we bring it up because one thing, I don't want to nitpick or be a micromanager, but I felt like the particles we do have now that are generated when you accelerate, they feel too big. They almost feel like we're trying to take up more space.
Yeah.
In the original game, they were smaller, and I tend to agree if we could make the streaks smaller. We need something there to give the illusion of momentum when there's no other reference point, right? So just make them smaller and keep them. But I like Dan's suggestion, like after an explosion, you don't see the particles when you're far out, but if we can tag that location in the level and we then fly through that later, maybe we can have little facings of scrap metal and bits and screws and stuff, come flying at you. Maybe even have them bounce off the hull of the ship. I don't know. And I know that, I seem to remember a version, one of the build versions, we had a very subtle nebula that as you flew, it would seem like there was a little bit of gas around you. It doesn't necessarily make sense for that first level around Earth, but it gave us a springboard to be able to use in other levels. I seem to remember one of the versions we had something like that. Is that no longer in there?
It's still in there. We removed it for the first level, but yeah, I still have all the code and stuff ready to go.
Okay. So everything we've designed right now has been kind of around shoving it into the first level. It sounds like we're getting really close to having all of the gameplay elements for the demo in there. Maybe we need to start a second level, a second environment based off the second level of the demo, and we can really start shoving those things in there, because it might not make sense with the context of nebula and stuff around Earth.
Like we're still running at 120 plus frames for this build, for just the debug build. So I think that we should be thinking about like what can we do here that they couldn't do in the original Colony Wars games? Can we, just put debris and stuff just all over the environment the player just runs into, like just different things for them to see instead of just empty. I think that we should really be prioritizing that.
Absolutely, and now that we have Dan's asteroids, the second level is an opportunity to do that. And the second level, that's the one where you have to go mining with the seismic laser, or seismic lance. You go mining the asteroids, they explode, you collect the crystals, you tow them back to your frigate. We can go nuts with that in the second level. We can reset expectations.
The asteroids have different LOD from different, like when you're closer, they have more detail when they're far away. Because I figured these things are going to be like everywhere. I figured if this is going to be like the main, like right now it's the only thing that you can like really gauge the distance besides other ships.
Yeah.
So I made sure to have a lot of them and a large variety of them too.
Yeah. So let's start. If one of you guys can start, I don't have access to the Unity file right now because we can't afford more seats right now.
No.
But if one of you can start in a level for that second level, let's start experimenting with it. Let's go crazy. The sky's the limit. Let's see what can we shove in that actually starts stressing the engine, and we see that frame rate start dropping, because that'll show us the upper limit of what we can do graphically.
Exactly. We just should start brainstorming I think color is a very good thing that we should experiment with as well.
Yeah.
Just like bright semi-neon colors that is just more interesting to look at. I think just as long as we have that just on the back of our minds.
How are we generating the skybox? I'm only importing models into the engine right now and all that stuff. But like, how do you? Is it a box? Is it a sphere? Like, how is it made? So I have an idea of how I could like wrangle this idea.
The camera has a clear layer, which is a skybox, I think, probably. But we also have the planet, like the Earth and the Moon and the Sun in the background. Those are like, I think they're like 100,000 meters away from the spawn point, like the origin, and a separate camera just films those and layers it on top of the skybox. And the main camera doesn't view those things. So we have multiple cameras rendering all this.
Basically, when Justin and I were working on that, he had never worked with a skybox before. The way it works, Dan, is remember Unreal, the original Unreal Engine, where you would set portals to the skybox, and basically you built an environment for your skybox, and it rendered that skybox to the physical, the geometry inside the playable space.
I always liked that better, actually. I never liked the whole engine where you had to make a chunk of the world. I was like, man, like, that's too much.
Yeah, I miss those days too. The way the original Unreal handled it did a great job. And Justin essentially reinvented something similar.
Okay,
so that's how we're doing it.
With sphere texture, and then I was thinking maybe like really detailed sphere texture with the camera in the middle, and then we could just I could make clusters of stars and nebulas and other things that would be like red, and then maybe the other side would be like something to contrast that, so you kind of could tell which way you're facing without looking at your radar. I was just thinking, there's totally. This will be fun. I like this. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. The skybox is its own layer, and then we have different objects that are not in the skybox, like planets and stars and stuff. Those are on a separate layer.
Yeah. So, and also, Dan, just FYI, the Earth and the Moon that we see in the first level, I built those in 3D Studio Max, and I rendered it out as a really high resolution PNG. Originally, Justin and I didn't know if we were going to do it that way, because Justin brought up the fact that, we're going to have all these high resolution textures, and isn't it crappy when you get a new game and it's 30 gigabytes and takes a couple hours to download? So originally we wanted to keep the file size low, but I was able to produce some really high resolution PNGs that aren't very big in file size, and they look great in the game.
There's no reason to have an actual 3D object if you're never going to be getting near it at all, right? So
yeah.
Yeah. No, this will work. I got some ideas and things. Thinking.
Yeah, and that was my idea. If the objects inside the skybox remain 2D, but are so high resolution 2D that they look 3D, we could actually do, Earth looks photoreal not because of Unity's rendering engine. Earth looks photoreal because of the renderer I used in 3D Studio Max. So we're able to kind of cross that barrier a little bit, and just because of the way this game is, the fact that you have a skybox in space and there are objects there that you aren't meant to ever get close to, we can leverage that mentality in our design.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So.
No, I like it. This is gonna be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. A different thing besides this, I linked this game. It's pretty old. It's an arcade game. It's called Ikaruga. And
Ikaruga. We know Ikaruga.
Yeah. I've been playing it recently, and that sort of got me thinking. What if the first? So we have in Colony Wars the loading screen, which is the ship flying through the other ship, and then once it loads, it breaks. The screen turns black for a moment, then it shows the game. Mm-hmm. What if we two things connected in terms of there is no? You can watch the ship as it exits this other ship, and then it starts the game right then. This first level that I linked, it shows the ship basically doing that, and there's a cool camera angle where it flies around the ship as it exits the bigger one, and then the game just starts right then.
Yeah.
I think we should be thinking about something like that. I
agree. Cool. And now that we have one of the Navy ships, Dan's ship. Now originally that didn't make an appearance. The conceit with the original Colony Wars is they hid a loading screen with your vessel flying down like a launch tube, and then you're right, there's that screen break, and then typically you'd be in first person, and then it was like you had been fired out of a launch tube. I agree that we should make that all one seamless experience, and not that we have any significant load times, but make it all one experience. But then we have to factor in what happens if what the player does is immediately turn around trying to see the ship it's launched from. Do we have a ship there? It's not going to make sense if we don't. And
what happened to that ship in the original game? In terms of the player world that they've constructed, what is that? The ship. The player launches out of that ship, and then what happens to it?
Well,
Does it ever explain?
It's never explained. In Colony Wars, when you have those scenes, remember, not all the loading screens were you being fired down a launch tube. There was parts in the storyline where you use one of the jump gates, and so there was like a warp travel, like a Babylon 5 style warp tunnel.
Well, this is easy. Why don't we just put one of those warp tunnels at the end of the ship? So, like, the player sees they are speeding up through the bigger Navy frigate, and then they get to the end, they see a little portal or whatever, and then they go through it, the camera angle changes, and then they're in the game. So that could we just have some kind of
so it's
wavy effect.
You're not being launched out of the ship, you're being launched into a portal.
Exactly. The ship is just a conduit for the portal. Why don't we do that?
What if we did like something like it's just an animation, right? It's just an animation of the interior. We just like do whatever to make up, and then it's just a starting animation. So as soon as the game starts, you know, you're not actually moving, but the animation looks like you are, and then you're moving. And then when it's done playing, then like you're free to go do whatever. But we just placed the start right in front of the ship, and like. You didn't know, then you wouldn't turn around through the ship.
The question becomes, what happens when the player takes control? If they flip 180 degrees...
They should be locked until the animation's done. That's all. Simple.
Yeah, but what
what we could do is that, why don't we do the thing where the player launches out of the frigate, and then we have this, the camera sort of pans already behind them to view the frigate, but then the frigate then proceeds to warp out on its own, maybe. So that...
Absolutely. If my memory serves me correctly, that there in a couple of the story missions, that's exactly what happens. It plays your animation of you flying down the launch tube, and then there's a screen break, and then you're in control of the ship, and there is a ship, one of the Navy vessels, or it might even be in the first game, one of the League vessels behind you that then warps out. If we could set that up per level, and once we get to the point where we're designing individual levels for this, if there's a trigger where we can have either that scenario where you're launched down a launch tube, you fly out, you take control, your mothership stays in the level for 30 seconds or something, and then warps out, and then a scenario where you're flying down a warp tunnel. And then we could trigger that. Say this level begins with one of these two animations.
So there's also Spider-Man on the PS4 that I think that came out like a few years ago. But then they have this cool thing, which is the starting scene of that game is Spider-Man jumping out of a window, and then the game sort of slows down and tells you how to do the web jump, and it like in media res you're learning the controls as this happens. Why don't we do something like that for the first level? So like the player launches out of this frigate, and then the camera pans back around while we're still in this cutscene. The camera pans back around to see the frigate like warp out. Then it goes into the normal view, and then tells you this is how you do some of the basic controls. Like all while we're in sort of this cutscene sort of zone.
We could definitely do something like that. The only issue is the original Colony Wars had specific training missions. Because the original design was once you're in a mission, you're flying for real and you're playing, and if you don't know the controls and you get killed, then the game moves forward like you lost. There are specific training missions, and what I would be worried about is if we made that training section inside the level and it was too long, we would actually frustrate some of the audience. So, but we could do something like that for a training mission. We need to think about training missions. Not everybody who picks this up will have played the original, or it's been so long since they played the original, the controls don't make sense to them. So we may want to build a specific training mission just for this.
We could make that the whole process I just described be like an optional for or the first time you play the game, it is required. It's just called Mission 1. But then every time you finish if you finish the game afterwards and you want to restart it, then that first level is just optional. Like you don't have to do it. It doesn't influence the story.
I think it should be. I think the training missions should always be optional. I think
yeah.
So like if you install a fresh install, you have to go through that. You have to go through it, and you're like, but I've been playing this for a long time. I don't want to do this. Like,
yeah, and in the original, the training missions were completely separate. In fact, I don't remember which one, the first one or second one. I remember recently in the last couple years figuring out there were training missions because they were buried in the options menu or something. Yeah. So let's definitely create a training mission, but let's not put it as part of the main story. We can even put another UI element on the main UI that says like training mission or something like that.
Well, we should also consider the fact that some people think that they'll be able to learn it as they go, and they may miss important details. I think that's not an insignificant number of people who do something like that. So,
right. But remember what happens if they miss those things. They're more likely to fail the mission. They fail the mission, the story still progresses. That element is what encourages replays.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, you're right.
And these games are the experience is so embedded in their replayability. We almost sort of want that to happen. Because when you're playing it for the first time or the first time in a long time, and you get near the end of the game and you're like, well, let me start this over knowing what I know now and knowing how acrobatic these controls are, and now that I feel them better, let me start over, and then you're destroying the enemy team and you're getting a completely different story.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, that's gonna be, yeah. I mean...
Yeah, we need to craft a training mission. But as far as the conversation of how do these levels start, being able to simulate the craft being shot down a launch tube, it's ejected, you take over, and then we don't even necessarily have to center the camera on the mothership, just to leave the ship in the scene for 10, 15 seconds and then have it warp out. I think that's a smart move.
Here's another thing. One thing that we think we should do, I just thought about this, is that we really need to capitalize on the player's first visual of the game as something that it needs to be something like really mind-blowing for them, amazing. We should not waste that on a training mission. We should have the training mission be a different format than the original game, in the sense that there's different visuals and stuff, so that their first interaction with the game, this first cutscene or whatever, is something more impactful than just like, all right, so here's the controls, here's a little asteroid that you could hit a few times. It needs to be their very first image of the game. They should not be going like, all right, so this is how it is. They should be going like, whoa, it's Colony Wars, but in the new, it's good.
I agree. Now, with this first mission, we already have a lot of that wow factor because we have the Earth. Like, we could be facing the Earth when we launch out, and you have this larger-than-life graphic. We can create something like that for the training mission. I could create another planet, maybe Saturn, and we actually see the rings, and we use it. I could create Saturn the same way we created
really
Earth.
Cool.
It would
what if
be.
you were flying up on the rings of Saturn so close that like you couldn't fly down? Like it's just purposely making it that like it's half the space that you normally would have, and that you know it would be this big wall of just asteroids. You're just like, well, there it is. Like can't go down, but I'll be shooting. Like,
yeah,
that'd be cool.
And we could also
find players to certain areas.
Yeah. And we could also almost break the fourth wall by creating Saturn in the background through the PNG method I was talking about earlier, but then filling the gap between the skybox and the playable area with Dan's asteroids.
There's a lot of beautiful pictures recently by NASA just unloading just tons of high resolution stuff. Like it's amazing. Like I was able to find all sorts of creepy asteroids, and I was like, that exists. Like.
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah. So for the training mission, I think you're right, Justin. We want a unique experience that is... It's not...
We should want people to do the training mission, not just to learn how to play the game, but also because it is impactful in some way beyond just learning the controls, I think.
It would also serve to bring the old audience into what our new vision is, and it's an opportunity for people that either didn't play the original or played it so long ago they don't think of it as this new way to say, wow, we are here.
Exactly, yeah. Just as long as Maybe we should. Yeah, I think that's it. That's the idea I'm going for.
Game badges. Just for playing the thing, you get a little like pop up like congratulations.
Yeah, yeah, little Xbox achievement. Let's definitely think about that. I feel like step one would be creating the scenario where the player is launched down the launch tube. They fly out, and Dan's Navy ship is behind them, implying they launch from that, and then the Navy ship warps out. That feels like step one. Then step two would be me creating the graphics for Saturn. And then step three would be creating the actual training mission.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds good. I mean, we could do like the demo with the training mission, and maybe like a couple of like extra missions that weren't in the game or whatever, just for like replay value and all that stuff. And I think that'd be something for people to kind of like get enough of to want more of it. You know?
Yeah.
So that way like, we can.
Yeah, I think what Justin's saying is this training mission needs to be more than just training the player how to play. We need to sell the sizzle.
Exactly. It should be very fast paced. It should be exciting, adrenaline stuff. It shouldn't just be like, all right, press the right bumper key to accelerate.
Yeah.
Good job. Then it should be something like a whole thing. That's why I like the Spider-Man PS4 feel, because the thing that Spider-Man sold the player on was like, this is how cool our swinging is, and then the first thing you do is swing, and you keep swinging, and it's just like, oh, all the cool sights of New York. Oh, it's just so awesome.
Yeah, it makes you feel like you're Spider-Man. Yeah.
Exactly. It's just the sound and all the visuals. That's what we need to capitalize on.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking. This is a little bit off topic, but I thought about animating UVs, and the idea that I came across this idea was that, you know, when you're shooting your lasers out of the ships, I feel like they're a little bit too big, and I think they should be a little bit narrower and more like contrast, kind of like a tracer from like a round of like, you know, because like machine guns, every 5 rounds there's a tracer, so that way you know where you're shooting, you have an idea of like the arc and all that stuff. And I was thinking like, what if like, you know, like what if we animated the UVs to like flutter a little bit? You know, that way it would be stretching the texture just a little bit. You know, like a bolt of energy kind of thing.
So
then
it would look more like a ball of plasma flying instead of a rigid beam of light.
I kind of want both. I want a ball of mass to like hit the ship, but I also want a trail at the same time. Like a really thin thing, so that way it's like you sort of could like see where it is. Because I think, so I was playing the demo, and I kind of felt like I was like, man, I should be hitting this guy. These things look huge. Like I'm shooting like, you know, like 20-foot bolts of lightning here.
Yeah.
So I was thinking like maybe a little thinner would be good too. And same thing what we mentioned earlier about the flying particles that we fly by things should be a little bit smaller too.
I definitely agree on the particles that fly by. The only thing about changing the weapon fire is we have to keep it within context of the visuals being the thing you think you remember from the original. If we are fundamentally changing them too much, we're stepping too far away from that. So if there's some way, like Dan, for instance, let's say you play the original Colony Wars. Oh, I know how we can do this. Every 3rd or 4th laser bolt has a probability of spawning a slightly different effect. Something like that. I think that would make sense.
Cool. Oh, I like that too. Yeah, like a variation of just like it's like one hue change between.
Yeah.
Just like the same thing with like machine gun fire in video games. It's like the next round that goes through, it's usually like a half step down or up. You know, and then that way it's not the same repetitive sound.
Like you remember in the early days of the original Counter-Strike, every weapon had a predictable shot pattern, so that if everyone had the AK and everyone stood at the wall,
go with the first shot. Don't shoot again.
Yeah. It's useless as a machine gun. Yeah, but then they rectified that later. But yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, just throwing ideas out there. I mean, like this is just kind of like this. The observations that I wanted, a little more.
Yeah. Cool.
Alex and I talked about that a few months ago. Like the idea of putting things that are bad for the player on purpose because it builds the world up. Like purposefully making things not work or they don't work as intended because it adds to the realism, then the alternative, which is everything, it looks like a simulation or something. It needs to be more realistic, as in these things don't work as intended a lot of times.
I would hope we wouldn't do that around the weapons, though. In a shooting game, the shooting has to be like, for instance, Counter-Strike only works because your gun never jams.
I mean, let me rephrase. I don't mean that every third shot the player just the weapon like turns around and hits him back or whatever. I mean like the laser just flies off in their direction. That'd be very frustrating. I mean, like, I
thought Counter-Strike was so real because when you have your knife out, you're so much faster.
Yeah, you run faster when you have your knife out, even though you have your gun strapped to your back. Yeah.
I mean, is it in the game? Is it canon that when the player their health reaches to 0, their ship gets destroyed, but they're somehow saved? Like, in the actual game, when they lose a mission, does their ship get destroyed?
It matters how they lost it. Certain missions in the game, it's like you have to do a thing by a time limit, like destroy this asteroid in 3 minutes. And then if you don't do it, you failed the mission, but nothing attacked your ship. And then other times, your ship was destroyed. It moves on as if, at least in Vengeance, because in Vengeance, the story is told from Merton's point of view. But in the original, in the original game, the implication is every time you play, if you get killed, the story continues as if you're just another pilot. You're a nameless, thoughtless, rankless pilot in the original, and it's kind of implied that if your ship's destroyed, you died, and now you're seeing the next level from the point of view of a completely different lead pilot.
One of the ways I think we could implement that aforementioned, like, purposefully bad thing is that if these ships are getting so damaged each time, how much money does the Navy have to really just repair these things? You know, like, if they can't, like in Star Wars, they're sort of like mass producing these clone troopers and stuff. So it's like that's their explanation for why these weapons never fire straight. It's because it's very cheap. So like for the Colony Wars thing, what if we just had it so that if the player loses a lot of missions, their thruster for just like a half second it like sputters and then they don't accelerate for just then, but then it's returned for the afterwards. So it's like that sort of thing, which is, it's not perfect. There are explanations for why.
My only fear, like I've said before, that might deviate too much from the retro remake, but something like that is the perfect stuff we should be adding into our third game. For instance, there's nothing from having to build in a mechanic where you have to repair your ships that were damaged in the last mission. And if you don't, the ship will fly in the next one, but all sorts of things could go wrong. I feel like that could be a gameplay element, especially because we talked about, in the original 2 games, there really wasn't a hangar. In Vengeance, there sort of was, because you could upgrade your ships, but there's not a hangar. There's no persistent feeling like you had a handful of ships to use as like Swiss Army knife pieces in your next mission. That could be an element we move into the third one with, and frankly, it should be. And there's nothing stopping us from putting elements like that in the third one and making them really part of the experience. I would want to shy away from anything other than visual changes with the original, because remember, we're trying to make what people think they remember. So
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of gameplay mechanics that could really take this further. That you could do.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's best right now is just to focus what we have and get this squared away. And then if we do get to go, or if this does take off, then we should start really thinking about like customizing like the type of weapon fire, the type of shields, and do like a whole approach where you could like say like, okay, I'm gonna go faster, but I'll have more ammunition, but then I'll be like last cannon, you know, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, and let's not forget that element of this. You know, this technically, I mean, this is, even though we're working on this, this is not our IP. You know, we've not gotten permission from Sony just yet. Our idea is we need to sell everybody on the idea that we can remake the originals, and then our third game that would be uniquely ours, the sky's the limit on. And I want to keep our conversations and our momentum around remaking the originals first, because everybody thinks they have a great idea for the next video game, regardless of the type of game. We have to prove to a whole group of people that, hey, listen to us. Not only can we remake these originals and bring them into the modern era, which it's criminal that somebody else hasn't done this yet, but now that we can prove to you we can do that, we can make our own. That's part of the problem with Star Wars and Star Trek and everything. Everyone wants to do their own version of those things, but they show so little respect to the original. We have to get people's buy-in and confidence that we can do this, and the way we do that is by remaking these first two. Say what, Dan?
One thing we got to do is just release the demo and see what they say. You know, I mean, like, you have to have something to review to have an opinion, and everyone's got an opinion, and everyone's entitled to their opinions. You know,
yeah.
That's why I'm like happy and with both negative and happy, because no news is good news, and sometimes bad news is also good news.
Yeah.
So
the point is, so the demo, that's another thing. People are messaging me asking, when's the demo? We can't have the demo out until until the grappling hook works and everything. We're really, really, really close. The demo, the pre-alpha, the alpha of the alpha of the alpha that's also the demo might just be releasing the first level in its raw form. But yeah, we've got to kind of stay focused on this idea that we're remaking this game, and for Vengeance, we're remaking these first 3 levels. And we have to go from there, and we just have to stay true to that vision right now. Otherwise, Matt, Dan, back me up on this. You get to a milestone, we're like, oh, there's all this stuff we can do. Let's do all this stuff. And then you go in too many tangent directions, and the forward momentum stops because everyone's spreading out.
Well, simple ideas become very complicated. That's another thing to take into account. And so I think what the best thing to do, in my experience, is if we're gonna do a game that is like, if we're gonna make a new version of a game or whatever without the new add-ons, write a game done. Write everything you're gonna do, and step by step with how it's gonna be. Like, plan everything out, including like how long does it take to fire, how long does it take to reload. Do the math, figure it out. Do some simple play testing, and you can save a lot of time. And then have your list of features, what you're willing to cut, what you're willing to keep for the basics, and how expensive is this level going to be versus other levels. And just sort of really kind of like all of us sit together like this and talk about what we want, and we document it, we write it all down, and we stick to the plan. Yeah. And then eventually, like, if something gets too big, budget cuts.
Yeah, we've all been part of a budget cut before. So cool. Well, I feel like this has been an excellent meeting. I hope our audience thinks so. We didn't show as much as we normally do, but we don't have to, because the je ne sais quoi of everything coming together is there. We're at right there at the cusp. Say what, Dan?
Maybe we'll be playing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, speak for yourself.
Yeah. So cool. Okay, guys, it was, I think, a great meeting. We should probably end it now because this meeting's gone for an hour. Let's do this. We know what we need to work on for next week. Us ironing things out and releasing this demo. It sounds like, Matt, if you were going to estimate, what's your next week look like, and how much time do you think is left in getting the grappling hook really on point?
Matt's not on the channel anymore.
Oh, he's not? Did he have to drop?
Yeah.
Poor Matt has to call from his car every meeting.
Yeah, on Mondays. Maybe, yeah.
Okay, well, that's fine. I'll talk to him offline. But this was good hustle, guys. Let's stick it together. I am so glad that things are coming along so quickly and so smoothly. That's something I have not experienced before. And I don't know, Dan, can you remember a time where a project smoothly?
think I remember modding Duke Nukem 3D for. We were doing something. Duke Nukem 3D Plutonium came out, and we took. It was me and my friend Justin a long time ago. We were making aliens, and we tried to anyways. And all we did was we edited the INI file. Yeah, we edited the INI file for that particular AI to move faster, and we just updated the damage on the river, and then it was like, oh, instant. Like now we have the mechanics, you know.
Yeah.
And we used to use sector effectors and all that stuff. So it's really easy to import textures. That was probably the smoothest prototype level design because it didn't require as many hours as it took to make a 3D model. You just took a picture of whatever you could and import it. You're done. I think that's the smoothest it's ever been. But this is nice. This is great. Yeah. This is really coming together. We got a crack team programmer and artist and UI artist, and don't forget about all the cool things that we're implementing. I mean, this is working out pretty well, and and the music. I have to say, I listened to it and I was impressed. I was really happy to hear the guitar, and I thought it was a good blend. And it'll only get better with some minor adjustments, from feedback, whatever, and then bam, we'll have something good.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I mean, in my career, even beyond the games we all used to work on, even in my professional career, even at big resource-rich companies like when I worked at Samsung, I can't remember any project moving so smoothly. And I think that's a lot to do with the fact that we have nothing but aces with each other. Like each one of us is just literally a subject matter expert that is coming to this with passion, and that's what this project needs, and that's what's going to make us succeed. So yeah. So awesome. Thank you guys so much for being here with the meeting. I'm going to sync up with Matt, and I'm going to look at all of those examples you guys put in the comments that I wasn't able to pull up while doing the video. I'm going to edit this video real quick. I'm going to release it, and then let's just meet next Monday like normal with the latest updates.
Great.
Yep, sounds good.
Over and out.
Over and out. See you guys later.